And I feel there's this narrative that just because you don't end up married to someone, it was a failed relationship. And as the daughter of a divorce lawyer, that is a seriously flawed sentiment and a conclusion to draw, because you shared a journey with someone at a time in which they needed you and you needed them. And it needed to happen in just the right time.
Welcome to the Sum of Everything podcast, where we discuss a little bit of a lot of topics, ranging from spirituality to finance and everything in between. I'm your host, Aishwarya, a serial hobbyist with an unquenchable thirst for learning, especially through new experiences. In this podcast, we will scratch every itch of curiosity, explore various perspectives, step out of our comfort zone, and experience some of everything. Because after all, we are just that, a sum of all our experiences. So, let's dive right in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sum of Everything podcast. As we continue our celebration of February as the month of love on Sum of Everything, today we are joined by yet another guest. And this one is once again a very special person to me. She is a qualified dentist and is currently working in the field of clinical research. She has been a small business owner, is a cat mom, and has dabbled in various fields and is a super adventurous person. She also happens to be my best friend of 15 years. I think that's the longest relationship I've had apart from my family. So, everyone, please welcome Shania.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to do this on a weeknight. And this is going to be super exciting. I know that our conversations end up being 4 hours long.
Long.
So it's going to be it's going to be difficult for us to maintain a 20-minute limit on our podcast, but we're
Yeah.
going to try.
Yeah.
So because we're celebrating February as the month of love on Some of Everything, we are going to be talking about relationships, obviously. Something that I think you and I have collectively a good amount of experience in. But also, we're going to be talking about how our perception of love has changed over the years. Now, I have seen you over so many years, and something I know about you is that you are an avid journaler and you keep a very detailed track of your life. And I know for a fact that you go back and read all of your journals. So, to kick off, I want to know, when did you actually start journaling and why did you start? And what kept you going?
I think it started in 8th grade when we started giving each other those scrapbooks to write your first crush, your favorite color.
Slam book.
Slam book.
Yes.
Slam book. My first ever slam book, I had a crush on a senior of mine. And I wanted him to be the first one to write in my slam book after my best friend, obviously. So she wrote, my favorite stuff, everything she knows about me. And she basically described him on the first page. And I went up to him, like shivering, like, please, can you fill my slam book? And he did, but he wrote a bunch of bullshit. And
As boys
but
do.
I,
At that age.
I remember coming back from that thinking, I'm going to save this forever. And I'm going to show it to him on our wedding day. You know, what's funny? You know how this ends? We have never spoken after that, actually spoken after that until 14 years in the future. And then what had happened was I was friends with a few people in the 8th grade and I wasn't friends with them in the ninth. But even though those relationships had ended in real life and we were all petty teenagers at this point, we had all the sweet core memories written down and saved. It was immortal. And I loved it. And from then on, I decided, okay, relationships change. I think it was my first like friend breakup. And it was shocking to know that people change, relationships change, they take their course. And I would like to have this stolen moment of time where nothing changes. So that's where it started, where I would write about stuff that happened in school, the teachers that yelled at me, the teachers that said mean things, the boys I had a crush on.
Oh my God. But it is such an amazing thing to be able to look back on your life and be able to see what you were and how you were thinking at different points in your life.
I don't
Um,
know if I'd call it amazing or cringy, but sure.
Actually, that's a good point to consider. So what strikes you most when you read about young Shania or the Shania who's writing these journals, from 5, 10, 15 years ago?
What really jumps off is like I am not the same person I was. And sometimes when I read the stuff I've written, it feels like I'm reading a stranger's diary. Or it's almost like I'm looking at this person and it feels like someone I would have never been friends with, never wanted to speak to, someone who I don't like, but then I admire because I can see the journey. So it's like a character you don't really like, but you see the growth and you then fall in love with the character. So that's how I feel.
That's a very nice way to look at it because, yeah, at the end of the day, even though it's the past version of you, you are looking at it from a very different, very evolved lens.
It feels like you watch her fail, you watch her be completely flawed, you can see her mistakes, and you want to scream at her and say, Stop, stop, you're ruining your life. Take your best friend's advice. I think I've screamed that. That would have been something I've been saying repeatedly. I think sometimes I'm like, you know what? You deserve that. Like I'm looking at a journal entry and I'm thinking, are you crazy? Can you not see the red flags? And then she gets hurt and she's dumped and she's shocked. And it's almost like you deserve that. And then you see her learn from it. So it's almost like this arc of the story, which is it feels warm at the end of
Mhm.
it. It feels like triumph at the end. But
Mhm.
it's like a whole plethora of emotions I go through reading everything.
It's like a movie you're watching, and you're rooting for the main character, even though you can see that she's
Yes,
flawed and making mistakes. But you can't really do anything about it because, you have to let her make her mistakes. Makes sense. I wish young Aishu also knew that because, she would have saved a lot of energy.
I know. I mean, sometimes I feel bad because I've written about today Aishu yelled at me, told me not to text him back, told me I shouldn't unblock him. But she doesn't understand. We're star-crossed lovers. And it's almost like I wanted to hear everyone's point of view, but I never really wanted to hear it. I wanted everyone to just say what I was thinking or basically support all my bad ideas. That's what I really wanted. And now when I want to come to someone for advice, or now when I actually am looking for a solution, I'm more open to hearing people's point of view rather than just wanting an echo chamber.
Mhm.
I think the 15-year-old me was just wanted to be validated in being a terrible person. And when I say terrible, I mean like terrible to herself. Being someone who had absolutely no regard for herself. So I wish she had listened to the people around her. I wish she had listened to her intuition. I wish she had done everything other than what she did.
But you would argue, and I know that you are the biggest proponent for this, that it is important to make mistakes. It is important to allow yourself to be heartbroken, to experience what it's like to pick yourself up after having your heart shattered. And as a person who's experienced a lot of that, you have a very unique perspective in that regard. For someone who is like me, who is at the opposite end of the spectrum, where I keep myself guarded and I don't put myself out there as much for fear of being, hurt or rejected. What would you say is the biggest takeaway for your point of view from your life? What do you believe right now when you go back and read your journals? And what advice would you give someone like me, a 15-year-old Aishwarya?
I'm going to say exactly what I said then, and I stand by that. I love having my heart on my sleeve. I loved it. I love
Mhm.
being in love. I love the idea of love. And I think that feeling when it's unconditional and true and honest is, like Bella said, it makes your world go round. And That's how I felt back then when I was 15. And I would always tell you to give it a shot, right? I would say, text him, DM him, say hi, do it. Because the
You
worst
would
thing
also
is for
take my phone and text him on my behalf. So that too.
all that, or push you and make you fall in front of
Oh
someone
yeah.
so that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't regret that. I don't regret being in love. I don't regret having the guts to put myself out there. Um, to answer your first question, I love learning from the mistakes, but I don't think 15-year-old me had the idea of consequences. There was only one thought on my mind. What's the worst that's going to happen? इससे बुरा क्या ही होने वाला है? Okay,
Hmm.
I'll cry, I'll get hotter in the gym. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? The only thing I wish I had done better was understood the concept of consequences, because some of my heartbreaks have had lasting trauma, and it's taken me years to unlearn so many toxic lessons.
Mhm.
So I feel like I'm glad I put myself out there, but I wish there was a limit to which I would give. What would happen was I would give, thinking the more love I give, the more irreplaceable I'll become.
Mhm.
And in years of therapy, I've learned that it was a fear of abandonment.
Mhm.
It was a fear of being left, being hurt, that I wanted them to have so much love, because I thought if I would give them that love, I would fix them, heal them, and then they would fix me and heal me in return. And I could have just done that. I could have sat with myself and given myself the love I needed. But back then we were 15. This is way before Instagram, and self love was not even a concept. I don't think we even heard those words. And I think if I did, to me at
Right.
15, self love was shopping, going out with your friends, and
Yeah.
partying,
Indulging, basically. Just
indulging. Yeah.
indulgence definitely makes sense because you really don't know much at 15. At 15, you're a kid,
You're,
you're a
you're
child. Yeah.
10 years away from your brain being fully formed. And we didn't even know that back then. Because
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, now when I see someone 21, 22 standing up for herself and just being comfortable saying no,
Mhm.
no to anyone, to anything, I think, where is this courage coming from? And it's almost so weird asking yourself that, because it shouldn't be courageous to say no. It's pretty normal to say no.
That's a very good point. And I just want to backtrack here and ask you, do you regret having lived a mess around and find out kind of life?
um, no, I don't. I I love every single story that I've had. Every single person who came into my life taught me so much about everything. In fact, the only thing I would like to change is a bad habit I've had in the past, but it's never related to a person.
Mm-hmm.
I loved all the people in my life, and I want to believe that they love me. It just happened that two people who weren't compatible did not end up together. And I'm so glad that I did what I did, because now
Mm-hmm.
I have stories to tell your kids.
Yes. Yes.
So, like John Gottman says, that there's only so much learning you can do on your own. So much of your applied learning of love comes only in relationships.
Yeah. Fair.
I used to think I had conflict resolution skills. I don't. I didn't. I didn't. My
Yeah.
idea of my idea of fixing something was either you don't talk about it, or you scream and shout and you're really toxic and it blows up in your face.
Mm-hmm.
It was only in relationships that I learned how to resolve conflict, how to repair conflict, how to
Mm-hmm.
grow from there. And
Mm-hmm.
everything about myself, the way I operate in relationships, only came from those lessons. So I don't regret it, not one bit.
That's so true because you learn that there is a whole other side of you when you're in a relationship. You meet someone you didn't even know existed within you, both in a good way or a bad way. And I think I realized that I had my own set of massive red flags. and what my insecurities were and what largely my skills were. And in fact, I want to go one step further here and say that I think the relationships I've had have allowed me to become a more confident person in my body, in who I am. I think it fixed that part of me that was very heavily steeped in body dysmorphia. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, it really does help a lot.
And I feel there's this narrative that just because you don't end up married to someone, it was a failed relationship. And as the daughter of a divorce lawyer, that is a seriously flawed sentiment and a conclusion to draw, because you shared a journey with someone at a time in which they needed you and you needed them. And this is the spiritual aspect of it. But
Mhm.
something in your soul attracted their soul, and it needed to happen in just the right time. And they had to come and teach you that lesson at that time. And agar wo tab nahi hota, so you would have learned it in a much harsher way much later in life.
Very good point. And in fact, I'm glad you brought up the whole point of souls and teaching each other lessons because it does call back to the previous episode that I just did about Inyon and how every encounter is fated and every connection that you have in your life is something that your past lives have in fact decided so whether people choose to believe it or not, I feel like it allows you a chance to assimilate information that you get and deal with maybe heartbreaks and lessons that you are going through in life, you know. And I think a lot of times it even leads you, like the connections that you make, leads you to other more significant connections.
Yeah, and I feel like I wouldn't have met you if it hadn't been for my first boyfriend. So to regret that would be crazy. And I'm glad that that didn't happen, but I'm so glad that it happened because I have you in my life. I
I
walked into your
know.
life because of him.
No, and that's a fabulous insight to have because I can see in hindsight that there were people that I met and interacted with who were just conduits to people that I can have lasting relationships with.
Exactly. Sometimes your boyfriend or your partner is just going to be your path to something. Sometimes you just need that external factor, right? It could be a friend, a partner, a parent, a teacher. It could be anyone. It just happened to be a partner. And I'm so glad because sometimes you need to allow yourself to have messy relationships because it's going to lead you to something happier.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think I'm going to ask you this. Mm, what was your definition of love 15 years ago, and what is it now?
So this is obviously heavily inspired by Bollywood and stuff I used to watch on TV and the books I would read, but I would relate to Bella or like Harry Potter's mom, or basically a female character who would give up everything in the name of love. Her life, her self, her interests, her future. And I thought it would glorify myself to me कि मैंने किसी के लिए अपना सब कुछ खोने को तैयार हूँ. That's love to me. And I used to think that me putting someone else first and him putting me first is ideal love. We hear about like जुनून, इश्क, मोहब्बत की किसी को warm रखने के लिए तुम खुद को जला सकते हो. That, and I used to write like that. I used to listen to stuff like that and poetry or shairi and see so many women in our lives sacrifice their future for their husbands and their kids. And I used to think that's noble. And I used to think that's what love is. For a very long time, that's how I operated in all my
Hmm.
relationships, which then led to self hatred and resentment. But after all this time and space and the time I gave myself to learn and grow and therapy, I think what I've learned is my now definition of love, when like in one word, it would be a safe space, an emotionally secure space, a spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical connection that is stable and leads to growth. But
And
it
that's
should
very
also be
wholesome.
fun. I think a, a relationship needs to have high highs and low lows, and it needs to be toxic.
Passionate.
Passion. I used to confuse toxicity for passion, and I used to think this is normal. Our baseline was toxic in the name of passion. And I think now I'm so happy with what anyone would think is boring, but to have someone to come home to that's safe, where there are no banging doors, where even in disagreements you are kind and it's you against the problem and not us against each other. That's what I would like to believe is true love.
That's awesome.
What about you?
Um, Me, um, I haven't really thought about it in a way that allows me to vocalize or verbalize what I think of love as. I have also had phases where I've thought that if I wasn't able to love with all my heart and love with all the passion and the burning, the eagerness to please, if that wasn't part of the relationship, then it wasn't true love. But of course, now I don't think the same. Now I believe that love doesn't have to burn. It can be slow. It can be calmer.
Yeah. Shakespeare had said that the course of true love never did run smooth. And I thought he was right. And I said, yeah, of course, it's not going to be easy and it's going to be difficult. And you're going to have to go through so much to get to this state of happiness. But I don't think so.
Yeah. I think that love and relationship is something that you have to work towards. It shouldn't. It cannot be easy. No relationship, whether it's a relationship between parents and a child, or siblings, or friends, there's never a relationship that exists without conflict. And I truly believe that conflict is important in a healthy relationship, a stable relationship, because that means that you care enough to express your opinion to that person. And I guess you'll only express your opinion strongly enough if it matters to you that they understand you, that the other person understands you.
Which is
So
conflict, conflict for the sake of conflict. If it's not
that is not,
leading to growth,
yeah.
then it's just toxic. But I think there's two parts to this, right? There's conversation and then there's comprehension. If you know you're doing your best to tell
Hmm.
someone, to state your boundaries, to you're asking for certain things, you're stating your love languages, and they refuse to listen and they refuse to respect you, you leaving is not a failure. Ending that relationship and saying, I love you and I respect you, but I need to choose myself is not selfish. So many people are constantly told that if you walk away, you're quitting. If you give up, you're a failure. If you choose yourself, you're selfish. And these narratives are not okay. I think we need to normalize being okay with putting yourself first for the right reasons,
Hmm.
choosing yourself because someone refuses to love you the way you need and want, and
Hmm.
ending something at the right time.
Yes, and I guess that sort of makes it all the more important for you to spend time in finding the right person to be with you, right?
And the way we are demonized for taking time to find the right person, the way we're asked to lower our standards or to settle for someone who will make us unhappy, and we will make them unhappy if we're unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
to be forced into making a choice because of age or society or biological clocks is just not okay. And as a 30-year-old, we're constantly told that we're running late, that we're behind, that we're gonna get leftovers. That
Hmm.
narrative is not okay. And for anyone listening, no one's waiting there with a clock timing you. You're not late. No one's at your finish line. You're literally still starting your story. You're still learning about yourself. You've not traveled, you've not met people, you've not had experiences that are going to change your life.
Yeah.
So, literally one moment away from your dream life. So, to keep looking for it without hating yourself and hating all your decisions, that's what I want every 30-year-old woman to feel.
That's fabulous. Actually, on that note, because we talked about finding the right partner, I want to ask, has your idea of an ideal partner changed over time?
The first time we were asked to write your ideal boyfriend, this was after Vampire Diaries or Bridget Jones'
Yeah.
Diary. It was
Yeah.
coming from there. And I wrote, he should be hot,
Yeah.
popular, tall. And this is popular when we don't have social media. There are no
Yeah.
likes or followers, but just popular.
Mhm.
Lead guitarist in a band or plays the guitar and sings with a voice like velvet. Do you know where this is
Wow.
from?
No, I have no idea where
Twilight.
this is.
Twilight.
Oh my goodness.
And this is the next one, which always throws me whenever I read it. Like System of a Down and Paramore. I have never heard this band ever. After, I don't know, eighth grade, never. But it was so important to me that my ideal boyfriend loves them, has curly hair, loves me like Edward loves Bella, has my initials on his BBM status, and has a tattoo of my name on his hand. Okay. It's about one very specific person. But you know what's funny?
Yeah.
Is that when I look at this list, I think, why did I write this? Because none of these attributes or qualities are relational. They have nothing to do with someone being in a relationship. It's just probably something that made my tween girl self feel good, or my then ego feel like this would be someone that would be good for me.
Okay, so how has it changed now with the development of your brain and your prefrontal cortex and how you look at the world differently after the age of 25? What attributes do you look for in a partner today?
So after therapy and a lot of life lessons and actually taking time to sit with myself and know exactly what I want, who I am, my flaws, and then decide who would be well suited for me. My list is, it starts with a Bible quote that goes, love is patient and love is kind. Love does not envy, does not boast. It has thereof. So that was what I wrote when I turned 30. And I wrote my 30-year-old list, which was, he should be patient, kind, and empathetic. He should be willing to work on himself, be curious, and be open to learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wrote, no debt, college educated.
You
Um,
gotta be practical.
and I wrote tall, dark, and handsome because that does matter, but it matters towards the end. And just someone who's willing to grow old with you and has that mentality of not quitting.
You know what I can tell from this list of yours? As someone who knows you very intimately, it is a reflection of who you are largely, the emotional qualities of it at least. And I think at the end of the day, because there's very little you can actually tell about a person without putting it into relational context with yourself, what I would think is that when you're looking for a partner, you are looking for the best qualities that you have to offer. And you would want that in your partner. But also, if you are as self aware as you are, you would also look at the not so great qualities or the flaws in you and hope that the partner you end up with um, has either complements or supplements those qualities in a way that makes you a whole unit.
Yeah. And I think as a woman, what I want is to be safe, to
Mm-hmm.
be okay to let my feminine energy out,
Mm-hmm.
to know that if I have flaws, I'll be guided the right way,
Mm-hmm.
and also know that if they have flaws, they will want to learn from me. So I think it takes someone really humble with a lot of peace with who they are to be able to open up to someone else, to be vulnerable, to accept that kind of love.
That's a beautiful way to put it. At the end of the day, you have to accept the love that is given to you. And that reminds me of a quote from The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is that you accept the love that you think you deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of, you've seen, right? You've seen the way I allowed myself to be treated in relationships before. And that came from the fact that I didn't love myself. It was not until my last final heartbreak where it it literally मुंह के सामने आके खड़ा हो गया कि you need to stop self-sabotaging. You don't need to earn love. You are loving. You are worthy. You don't have to be extraordinary to be loved. You can be a simple, normal woman who is just existing and you still deserve to be loved by someone. You deserve it just by virtue of being you.
I think that is something that we should all keep in mind. That is worth keeping in mind for the days when we feel low about ourselves.
Yeah, that's why we have best friends to
That
remind us of things that we have said to each other. Like, you give me the best advice, and then you'll ask me the same question. I am here today because I listened to you. And then,
likewise.
and then when you don't take your own advice. So I think that's why best friends exist, right? So we have our platonic love and our soulmates in the form of best friends
Best
and
friends,
sisters.
yeah. No, 100%. I agree with that sentiment very, very strongly. And I think this is a good place to sort of start to wind down. So, as we end this episode, I want to ask you one last question. We've talked about so much, so many of your experiences, things you've learned, good and bad. So, if you could go back, would you do it all again in exactly the same way? Would you do something different? And not in a way that you regret the things that have happened to you. But is there something you would like to change in your journey if you could go back?
I would 100% do it all over again. But this time, I would be kinder to myself for the mistakes I made. I think I hated myself for messing up so much. And I would berate myself and write about it. Like, my journal entries were, "You're so stupid. Like, you're full of shit. Of course, you deserve that." And you need to make mistakes. I don't think you learn without it. Either you learn
Mhm.
from your own mistakes or you learn from someone else's mistakes, but you need to make mistakes to learn and grow. I would definitely be nicer, kinder, more patient with her because she was still learning about the world. She was still learning about the people and the ebbs and flows of relationships. So if I could go back in time, I'm just gonna sit next to her and be like, yeah, you should fuck up, but be nicer when you do. Be nicer when you're facing the consequences, when you're crying and you're sitting and stuffing yourself with ice cream. Think about the consequences of how much this self hatred is going to change the chemistry of your brain. So just be nicer to yourself because therapy is expensive.
Words to live by. Therapy is expensive.
Be nice.
Yes, I think that's something that we can all take away from this. Be nicer, be kinder to yourself, because I say this a lot. You are your only forever companion. But this has been a fabulous conversation, as always, between you and me. We have some amazing conversations, and I know that all of our conversations could be podcasts, but thankfully, we actually sat down and recorded this one. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this episode. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I hope the listeners loved listening to this. I hope you learned something. I hope you took away something, and I hope it helped reinforce some beliefs about yourself. And
Another thing that I think everyone should take away is even if you haven't, it's not too late to end a bad pattern. It's not too late to leave a relationship that's harming you. Even if you're 30, even if you're 35, if you're hurting and it's not good for you and you're not growing, it's not too late to change and become a better version of yourself, or just be happier. If anything today reminds you of your 15-year-old self who needed someone to tell her that, here's a reminder to just choose yourself.
Fabulous. And I don't think there can be anything more said after that. I hope everyone loved listening to this episode as much as we loved recording it. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.
Bye.